So how did the rules about ocean ownership come about? Let's just look at a very brief run through the history. Going all the way back to 1609, a Dutch scholar was the first one to propose something called mare liberum. I don't know how it's pronounced in Dutch, but nonetheless, it's probably Latin. And he was proposing actually equal access to all that far back. Only in the 1700s the idea of territorial seas developed, and this idea of 3 nautical miles from the shore was introduced. How did it evolve? It turns out that if you put a cannon shot on the coast and shoot a cannon, it would go about 3 nautical miles, and that was considered your territorial seas. Since then, there's been lots of negotiations, rewritings, agreements, disagreements, and so on. After the United Nations got established after the Second World War, actually after the First World War, and then got renamed after the Second World War, it came up with the Conference on the Law of the Sea. So negotiations have been going on since 1958, 1960, 1970s, 80s. Even now, there are many issues that remain unresolved, because as the ability of the humans to mine the deep sea, for example, increases, as capabilities increase, there is a push to go and exploit international waters. But how do you make sure that there is no free-for-all and pollution and destruction of natural waters and so on and so forth? So treaties have been undergoing revisions over time, as you can imagine. Coastal nations jurisdiction, right now the national sovereignty extends to 12 nautical miles, but the exclusive economic zone is defined as 200 nautical miles, which is related to the change in the slope. So the shelf area typically goes out to 200 nautical miles, but if there is a special coastline which has a larger shelf, then the EEZ, exclusive economic zone, gets extended to 300 and some 350 nautical miles. Okay, so it depends on the shelf configuration, geography of the shelf. Everybody has a right to free passage in the international waters. Open ocean mineral resources are regulated by the International Seabed Authority, and United Nations is still the place that tends to arbitrate disagreements and conflicts. So here is an example of the exclusive economic zone of the US, because it bought Alaska from Russia way back when. You can imagine drawing a perpendicular line to the coast out to 200 nautical miles everywhere. You can see the West Coast, East Coast, Gulf of Mexico, Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, Hawaii, Guam, and so on and so forth. So United States owns all these real estate across the world, and India has the coastline going from the border of Pakistan over here down to Sri Lanka. So this has to be determined based on the distance between the two borders, and India also owns the Andaman Nicobar Islands and so on. So remembering that most of the fish are caught in the coastal waters, this is obviously very critical to own the exclusive economic zone. So countries collect a lot of data, navies collect a lot of data, because navigation, submarines, illegal activities, everything has to be monitored and controlled. But data also tends to be very sensitive, so if you want to do research in the exclusive economic zone, you often will not get data, but this data can be crucial for understanding various biological, biodiversity, coral reefs, mangroves, sediment flow, erosion, and so on, right? But nonetheless, you can understand why exclusive economic zones are very sensitive regions and why countries will not easily share the data. although many satellites can have high resolution, hyperspectral kind of measurement capabilities, and they can still collect a lot of information from far away, right?